Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated Legacy action. Today we are playing Kulne's Legacy Challenge winning Grixis Delver deck. This deck is arguably one of the best decks in the format right now. Delver's always right up there as a tier 1 deck usually, and now is not really an exception, although I think the format is certainly wider and more open than it has been in previous iterations of Legacy. So, what does our deck want to do? We are essentially a tempo deck. We want to slam down something like a Delver of Secrets or a Dragon's Rage Channeler, and then kind of ride that to victory with a bit of disruption in the form of Force of Wills and Dazes, Lightning Bolts, removal, that sort of thing. And maybe follow up with another threat like Murktide Regent to really close the door. And we also have Wastelands to mess our opponent's mana base. That's kind of what we're trying to do. We're going to get outvalued by some decks, but we have incredible card selection, so we can keep the tempo pressure going because things like Dragon's Rage Channeler alongside cantrips and even Mishra's Bauble gives us a lot of access to the specific things we need to just push forward and win the game. We also have Orcish Bowmasters as a potent threat, as, you know, blue decks exist, and this card is very good against them. Mana base wise, we've got 4 Volcanic Islands and 3 Underground Seas, and that means we don't have any space for something like a Mystic Sanctuary to go and fetch back one of our things later on. We're not necessarily trying to play for the long game, although we can sort of sculpt certain hands in certain matchups. That's pretty much it. Delver's been such a staple for Legacy for so long. It's not something that requires a great deal of explanation. And this is not that unusual. I guess the things that are slightly unusual is that we have 4 Wastelands. Sometimes you only see 3 in a Grixis Delver deck. And we don't have any like big card advantage type things. Some people have been messing around with different ways of getting big card advantage in these sorts of decks. We don't have anything like that. We are more on the tempo spectrum, which is what I prefer to play when I play Delver. Sideboard wise, we got some interesting tools here. Bunch more counter spells. We've also got some Pyroblast as well. We've got a couple of Counterbalance, which is going to be good in quite a few matchups. Things like the Mirror, obviously, because a lot of our cards have got the same CMC. Or mana value, as it's called now. And also against a lot of combo decks where they're going to be trying to string together like 1-drops and things, we can just board in more ways of messing with them. So Counterbalance is quite a useful tool to have access to. We've got a little bit of Graveyard Hate in Surgical and unusually Unlicensed Hearse, which you don't see in Delver that often. So I'm curious to see how that plays out. We have a Grafdigger's Cage, which is pretty standard as a one-of. A couple of Meltdowns and an Abrade to blow up some artifacts, and a little bit of removal in the form of Sheoldred's Edict. Obviously, these Pyroblasts are also removal in matchups where we're trying to blow up Murktide Regents. And yeah, that's about it for deck. This is Kulne's Legacy Challenge winning deck, and I'm excited to play a little bit of Delver. Let's get into it, really. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's get some Legacy going. If you're looking to play Legacy on MTGO like me, why not try Card Hoarder? They're a rental service that I personally use, and I found them better than other rental services that I've used in the past. So why not give them a try? We're on the play for round 1. We have a Delver of Secrets into some removal spells, and we don't have a blue card for this Force of Will, but we have a lot of blue cards on our deck, so I'm pretty confident we should be keeping this one. We're on the play, so we get to start off with Delver. The question is, what land are we playing first? We could just jam this Volcanic Island and then have access to Lightning Bolt next turn. And then also we can fetch up an Underground Sea to cast our Snuff Out. Or we could just play the Underground Sea off of the Polluted Delta, because we'd rather our Underground Sea gets wastelanded mostly, I'd say here. And we do have another fetch for the purpose of Brainstorm, so I like the Underground Sea here first. Let's try out a Delver of Secrets. Hopefully they'll have some nice creatures for us to explode, because that's what our hand does right now. Let's see how... Alright, so there's the Wasteland. They do not want to wasteland our Underground Sea. That's pretty reasonable. They might just do it in our turn here. Ponder. Yes, I'll reveal Ponder. Are they going to... They're not going to hit that yet. Okay. So we'll cast ourselves this Ponder now. Looking for... Alright, I don't hate this. So we'll put Force of Will down. Then the Brainstorm. Then the Brainstorm. Say no, draw this Brainstorm. And it's interesting which one we're supposed to play here. It depends if we wanted to see that Brainstorm on top of our library next turn, which I kind of do, which means we're probably supposed to play out the Volcanic Island, but that means that's liable to get wastelanded. So it's kind of an awkward one. I think we just play out the Scalding Tarn here. Like if we do have to Lightning Bolt, we're probably not going to do it on their turn anyway. We can draw our Brainstorm first. So we have the blue card for Force of Will. This turn, also, we could have made the play of just not casting the Ponder and using that as our blue card. So we're going to see an island cycling or swamp cycling, I suspect now. But yeah, so we could have just kept the Ponder in hand as our blue card, but we have a lot of blue cards hitting our deck, and we kind of need to... Like, we had a dead card in hand with the Force of Will anyway. Obviously, it wasn't dead with the Ponder, but we wanted to try and sculpt a little bit more into the game. And I think that was a fine choice to make. It's meant that we weren't at the mercy of the top of our deck as much. Let's see what happens here. So we've got the swamp cycling here. We can see something like a reanimate, which would be kind of annoying on this, truth be told. So they'd take 6. Then we bash them for 3. Going for a grief here. How do I feel about grief? This is interesting. This Snuff Out is not great for us, right? Alright, what we're going to do here is we're going to get ourselves a Volcanic Island. We're going to cast this Brainstorm because the Force of Will isn't going to line up very well versus grief type stuff anyway. This way we can hide our lightning bolt, so if they reanimate the grief, we have that to hand. Okay, I like a decent chunk of the stuff we have available here. Snuff Out can go because that's like the worst card. We want to ponder before that happens. I don't mind having the Wasteland. Dragon's Rage Channeler is pretty nice as a thing to keep secret here. So we can put the Dragon's Rage Channeler on top here. Because if they're going to reanimate some guys, we can have 6 power of evasion in the air. Now we will need to flip this Dragon's Rage Channeler to get it to be in the air, but that shouldn't be that difficult to do. We've got 3 types already. We just need to find like our Bauble or a creature that we can put in with a DRC trigger. They stack these triggers in an interesting way, so their creature's dying first. That's unusual. I don't think it necessarily means anything though, but it is unusual to see. And maybe that was just a slight misclick or an error from our opponent that we might be able to capitalize on in future games. Because that gives us the opportunity to now, if we had something like a surgical, obviously not something we're going to have main deck, but we could then remove the grief before the discard takes effect. Right, so I've taken our Ponder. So that's what we're going to use to shuffle away that Snuff Out, but we can just get rid of that using our Dragon's Rage Channel if necessary. Right, so we'll fire this. I guess that means we're using our... Alright, yeah. So the plan here is we'll Wasteland this Underground Sea now, so that they can't do Dazes. Right, black mana. We do have to play this Channeler first, otherwise we're liable for getting stung by this Wasteland taking us off red. Fatal Push. Okay, so just Fatal Pushing this guy. That's fine. Not amazing for us, but it puts a creature... Oh, so doing the Daze trick here as well. Sure. So they've dazed their own spell here to save their land from the Wasteland. But now we can play our DRC, which will be Delirious, I believe. We need to make some more inroads in our opponent's life total. But I don't hate the spot we're in right now. In our upkeep, I'm probably going to Lightning Bolt them. The only downside with that is the Snuff Out is our answer to Murktide Regent. Do I want to have that answer to Murktide Regent? That is certainly a thing we could be interested in. Depends how far we think this Dragon's Rage Channeler is going to go game-wise. The Wasteland can also shut off the Snuff Out. I think we bolt our opponent here. Like, yes, it can answer Murktide Regent, but we might not have to play against that, and we know they've got a troll going on and stuff, so... Right, Daze. I don't hate that one. Play this out. This allows us to hardcast the Daze if that's the thing we're interested in. So we have Force of Will and Daze. So we can pick which one is going to be more useful when the spell gets put on the stack. They can take out our Black Source here, which will stop us deploying something like a Bowmasters. But if they're removing a bunch of their... Well, if they're removing like half of their mana, that's going to be pretty reasonable for us. Okay, we're going to get another cycle here. Probably another Troll, because these decks tend not to run Lorien Revealed, but there it is, Lorien Revealed. Usually as like a 1 or 2 of if they are in there, but that gives us a little bit more information about what our opponent might be doing. They might be going a little bit bigger with the Lorien Revealeds. Or it could just be like a 1 of, just like an extra cycler. So we could see something like a Murktide here. We have a Force of Will we can fire off for that. We have a Force of Will that we can pay around Daze. Maybe we were supposed to keep the Snuff Out then. I did mention this is a thing that could go wrong, but again, we have an answer to Murktide here, so let's see what DRC finds us. A Wasteland. Do I want a Wasteland here? Take them off of their second source? I think so. It's annoying that we don't know if this Force of Will is going to work or not. Okay, it's not going to work. Okay, so now we are just in the absolute dirt here and our opponents won the game. So now we currently Wasteland their Wasteland and we don't really want to fire this off now either. Our Dragon's Rage Channeler has to run into this Murktide, and not keeping that Snuff Out has punished us a little bit there. Maybe we should have read more into the fact that our opponent wasn't casting anything, like what could they have had? But yeah. Our opponent has a Stifle in their deck, which is interesting. But this game is mostly over, I would say. We're living off the top. Yep, there goes our black source, so that shuts off Snuff Out. Right, Delver of Secrets, probably not the best here, but let's strip away one of their underground seas here. Maybe we're supposed to do this before we do this, so they can't do a Fatal Push Daze line. Stifle. Okay, sure. Still a 1-for-1 trade, but they do get to keep their mana source around. So we need to flip Delver into Brainstorm, I guess. That probably isn't good enough either. So we take 6 here. So we flip our Delver, it's going to be on chump block duty. I guess we could draw a Bolt, and then we can at least trade 2 for 1 to keep ourselves alive. That doesn't really feel like a good way of trying to win this game. If we'd have kept the Snuff Out to take out a Murktide, the situation could have been a little bit different, but we did see that they had the Force of Will. So that would have got countered anyway, and we would have been 4 life worse off for it. So I think I was still right to dig to the more flexible answer, because Snuff Out isn't going to answer any of their threats apart from Murktide. Whereas if we found the blue card for the Force, that gives us an answer to anything that our opponent can play. Obviously, they had the answer, so I don't hate the play we made. I think it was fine. I think I would probably do it again in the same spot. It's just unfortunate it's panned out this way. So our opponent is on a blue-black scam list by the looks of it. But the Stifles are a bit unusual. But I'm quite a fan of Stifle in specifically tempo-y decks. So if they can make a troll and then just protect it, Stifle's quite good for doing stuff like that. Alright, Delver of Secrets. Let's see. Lightning Bolt. Yes, okay. So we have a way to not die. Now our opponent did just cast a Brainstorm, so not the best for us. If they got a Fetch Land and a Mystic Sanctuary in their deck, then we lose here. Because they could put a thing on top, grows to 7, and then we're just chump blocking and getting nowhere. Sheoldred's Edict. Yep, that'll do. So the not getting the stuff out didn't make a difference there because it would have got hit by the Force of Will, whatever our answer was. So, what is useful here? I don't really like pitching cards 2 for 1 in matchups like this. So, we'll get rid of these Force of Wills. We'll grab some Pyroblasts. That gives us a little bit more flexibility. The question is, do we want the stuff out? Yes, it kills Murktide, but it doesn't do anything. Whereas Pyroblast is a little bit more of an all-round answer. I like Daze on the play, not so much on the draw, so we'll have to address that when we come to it. Lightning Bolts can take out Griefs and things, as well as our opponent's life total. I like Brazen Borrower. Unlicensed Hearse is kind of an interesting one here. I'm down for a bit of Hearse action. Let's strip out 1 Daze for this. This can kind of keep their Murktide in check. Like Grafdigger's Cage can stop some of their reanimation shenanigans with the Troll and the Grief, but this way... Alright, I like this. So, this way with the Unlicensed Hearse, we have a threat, as well as something that can keep the Murktide Regent from coming into play. So it's just got a lot more use than a single Grafdigger's Cage, which would stop one of their things, but not all of them. I would like to lead out just on the Dragon's Rage Channeler and start things moving in that direction. If they, like, Thoughtseize us or something, and take our Bowmasters, that's annoying, but it is a creature in our graveyard for the purposes of Delirium. And we already have Sorcery and Instant, so our hand does get there. Just the Wasteland again. Okay, they're going straight in for the Wasteland play there. Interesting. I think I want to Thoughtseize here rather than deploy another Channeler. Because this way we get to Thoughtseize when our opponent can't Brainstorm or anything. A Daze. Would I like a Daze? Alright, our opponent's got some things. So they have just a Swamp here. Many Brainstorms. Interesting. What are we supposed to get rid of here? I think it's the Bowmasters. It does give them a line to reanimate it later on, potentially. But their hand is going to really struggle versus our Bowmasters. If they find a blue source. If they don't find a blue source, then we win. So, either way, I like the situation that we found ourselves in. I'm surprised they Wastelanded there, to be honest. They had a spell they could play. And now they've stranded their hand, so they didn't really get to play Magic unless they draw a blue source or a Cycler. And we get to lock them down underneath a Daze as well. Okay, so they did find an island. They're going to blue blast our guy. So now we will just main phase this. Bowmasters is trying to, instead of trying to like catch them out or whatever, we'll just put them in a horrible choice. Because we know this will resolve as well now. So there's no point trying to wait for them to draw a card that might be something annoying. So we have an Orcish Bowmasters. We have a Daze for any removal spell they might find. There's the swamp. They're going to reanimate their Bowmasters. They're going to Fatal Push our Bowmasters. How do I feel about that? I think I can live with that. I don't think that's worth dazing there. That was a very good draw, though, for our opponent. It really unlocked their hand. Otherwise, the clock was definitely against them. All right. This is an interesting one. I think I do just want the Channeler doing its thing here, though. A Wasteland put into our graveyard. That's not what we want right now. I like these cards. I would like to have the Underground Sea for next turn, if we don't have to daze this turn. I think I'm probably putting Unholy Heat, and then probably the Underground Sea here. Get our 1 point of damage here. So we can counterspell a Palantir this turn, and then we can shut off 1-drops the turn after with our Counterbalance, knowing that we have an Unholy Heat on top of our library. An Unholy Heat which can answer Troll of Khazad-dûm, which is rather important, since that's a big beefy boy that they can play. Also, how big would their Murktide be right now? Their Murktide would be a 6/6, so that would be good enough to blow that up too. Right, so drew a Wasteland for turn. What are we going to see here? They're going for the Palantir. So our Daze should work here. So we Daze, tagging this, and because we've got a land on top, we can now get rid of that if we want it. Or we can leave it on top to make sure that our Counterbalance does work next turn. So I think we put this on top of our library still. So that means we've got guaranteed 1 on top of our library. On top of the library, we can start bashing with our 4 damage now. And then if we get to untap, we have Removal Spell, we have Pyroblast, and we have Counterbalance in play, wrecking our opponent's day. Hopefully. Taking out a red source is not irritating. Land here, go to attack. So our hand is kind of blank right now because of that Wasteland. But we have a Counterbalance in play. So we can just blind flip and cheese our opponent in that way. And if we find any red source, then we have these unlocked. And if we find any spell, then we can start unlocking some other things. We're going to see here. It's going to be a Reanimate, perhaps. Just a Lorien Revealed Cycling, sure. This is probably going to get them an Underground Sea. There it is. I'm casting a Brainstorm first. Surprised I didn't cast a Brainstorm and then use the Cycling as a shuffle. Alright, so we're not seeing that. We're seeing a Murktide this turn instead. So we do need to find our red source of Pyroblast to kill the Murktide. That explains why they didn't use it as a shuffle effect. They just wanted to get the biggest threat on board. So very much like to find a red source now. Otherwise our Channeler has to just wander into their Murktide Regent and we're going to have a pretty miserable time. Alternatively, we can have a Murktide Regent of our very own on top of the library. Brazen Borrower. Okay. That does answer the Murktide. This does play into Daze, but I'm not sure Daze is going to be in their sideboard for the games on the draw. Put this into our graveyard because we don't have any red mana right now. Alright. And now it's going to be a little bit harder for them to refire this Murktide straight away. So we bought ourselves a little bit of turns, and our opponent's going to be very low. To crack this fetch, they'll be dead on our swing. So they can't deploy a Murktide this... Well, they can, but if we find an answer, then we're in trouble. Let's have a look. Mishra's Bauble. Okay, so their Brainstorm is live right now. Mishra's Bauble is not an exciting draw for us. So they can deploy a Murktide here. They'll be going to 4 and then we bash them to 3 with our Orc army, which means Lightning Bolt will be a win if we can find it. I think the right play for them is probably just to jam the Murktide here. It's only going to be a 4-4, but that's certainly going to be big enough. Right, tapping out, which is interesting. It does play them slightly into a Daze. Yep. So we know the top card of our library is Mishra's Bauble, so we don't need to reveal this. Let's have a little surveil first. A Wasteland. We do not want this. So our Dragon Channel has to attack, so we may as well send in our Orc army as well to get that additional 1 hit. So now we have the choice of what we do with this Bauble. I think we fire it off now so we can draw a card in our opponent's turn, which could be something like a Brainstorm, which can set up our counterbalance. So the fact that we're a 3-colour deck has certainly messed us up a little bit. They have an Orcish Bowmasters. Let's see what's on top. Polluted Delta. Alright, not very exciting. It does give us all this red mana though. But we're going to take a little bit of a beating from this Bowmasters. Our opponent's drawn pretty well this game, I would say. But I think the fact is their deck is slightly less clunky. They get to play on these basics, whereas we don't. We have to kind of jam into all of our dual lands. And we have some like narrower answers. Yes, we'll use counterbalance, but if we don't have top card at the moment, a Ponder on top of our library. Sure, so we've got their 1-drops covered. Yeah, so we have things like Snuff Out, which is like a really clunky card, really. So they have this Daze, so we know that our poor little Brazen Borrower is probably not going to have a great time if we just slam it out there. All of our stuff is instant speed apart from the Ponder. We don't really want to cast the Ponder into the Bowmasters anyway. So I think we pass. If they cast a spell, we get to see what's on top of our library. And then we can make some decisions. Possibly have 2 flips in one turn to our counterbalance to try and get some real value going. But I think we probably have to... If they attack with everything, we play the Borrower. They Daze it. If a top card of our library isn't a 2-drop, we just lose. So I think we have to deal with this Bowmaster, this Murktide right now. So I think the best bet here is the Pyroblast. And then we can save the Unholy Heat for something like a Bowmasters. So we can cleanly kind of answer the things that are jamming us up. Alright, so we're going to see our counterbalance here. Let's have a look. Scalding Tarn. Okay, not a great one. Yeah, so that turn like ages ago where our opponent managed to take us off red. That's probably won in the game overall, I would say. Made a real difference to how this game played out because it just shut off all these important cards that we had in our hand, like the Unholy Heat and stuff, which led on to our Dragon's Channeler dying and leaving our opponent on 3 life, which isn't really the amount we want them to be on. Okay, so we take 3 here. Unless they have another Bowmasters and they can grow their Orc army and ping us for 1. Which would certainly be annoying. There will come a time where we just need to cast Ponder looking for Lightning Bolts. And the question is, when is that time? Given our opponent has a Daze, we can play our Borrower around the Daze. What does that do for us? Alright, a Wasteland. So we can't do that anymore. We're going to lose this Volcanic Island. Yep. That's an annoying one. Casting a Murktide Regent. The top card of our library is a fetch land, I believe. So... Alright, so they have a Daze. If we Ponder into Lightning Bolt, we win the game because we have a fetch land on top of our library. Let me just crack this now. Ponder. We got 4 looks at a Lightning Bolt here. Is Murktide good enough? Not into their Daze it isn't. So, any order. Okay, we drew a Brainstorm, which is pretty bad news for us. So this will put us to 5. And they have 3-4 damage if we kill this Murktide. So we do get another spin of the wheel here to survive a bit longer. We could hit this, but then we die to the Murktide anyway. So we do have all of our things in here, don't we? So we'll kill this, playing around the Daze that we know in their hand. So we have 4 looks at Lightning Bolt again, because we can cast the Brainstorm, then with all the Orcish Bowmaster triggers on the stack, we can cast the Lightning Bolt after we finish resolving our Brainstorm. So there is that. If they have a Bowmasters here, we lose. I guess the top card of our library could be kind. Polluted Delta. It was not kind. So this is 3, 4, 5, and we die. Yeah, our opponent's draws were pretty phenomenal that game. But we did kind of get bogged down by the fact that we are a 3-color deck. And that did come back to bite us in this round. So it's not just, oh, our opponent drew better, GG's, end of the story. There is a trade-off for what we're doing with our deck by playing these powerful spells of 3 colors. And we did get kind of exposed a little bit there. All right, let's go to round 2. All right, round 2, we've got Dragon's Channel into some fun stuff, so we can keep this. If our opponent shows us stuff that makes me want to Thoughtseize on turn 1, we have that to do as well. I played against this opponent quite a few times. I can never quite remember what they're on. I think they do chop and change a little bit, but I might be mistaken. A Bauble. Are they a combo Bauble deck? Or are they something with channelers in? Hope of Giripur. Okay, so this means we're Thoughtseizing on turn 1. Because I have a feeling our opponent might be able to kill us. So let's... I think they're on a Beseech the Mirror combo deck here. Galvanic Relay is kind of the only card that does anything here. So let's just take that. And I'm not quite sure what our opponent's on, but it looks cool. I'm liking what I see. Strike it Rich is not one you see often. It's kind of like a freebie, so... Attack us with a little Hope of Giripur. Okay, so they drew a Bauble for 10. So we have choices here. We can just play this Bowmasters and get rid of their Hope here. That seems like a pretty reasonable thing to do. And then we can use our Ponder next turn to try and dig ourselves towards counter spells and that sort of stuff. Thoughtseize. So we're probably going to lose the Ponder here. They might take the DRC because it represents a way that we can clock them and also find some other spells. But I think it is generally the Ponder there. Right, so there is a Lotus Petal. There is another Lotus Petal. Have they got a follow-up? Like a relay? They do not, by the looks of it. Okay. So we can deploy our little channeler here. And then we can Wasteland our opponent off of their mana here. This means that they're going to struggle to cast spells without having to give up other resources unless they've got another land on top. So that should hopefully go a decent way to messing with our opponent's resources. So we're going to Lightning Bolt them in our upkeep so that we can filter our draw. So in our upkeep, our opponent hasn't done anything here. We're just going to Lightning Bolt now and get a little filter on our draws. An Orcish Bowmaster. I don't think we want that. We'll put that into the graveyard. That's a creature for our channeler. This will be the instant for our channeler. And we can draw a regular card here. Deploy this. We can bash for 3, 4, 5 here. And then next turn, how much damage are we looking at here? So 1, 2, 3. So we can make this a 6/6. So that will be lethal. 3, 4, 5. This is already lethal anyway. So I don't think we need to play the Murktide here. This way we can keep a mystery card in our hand that might mess with our opponent. Strike it Rich. Sure. A Dark Ritual. Right, we're going to see a Beseech the Mirror here. Sacrificing our Lotus Petal. That's probably going to be good enough, right? A Burning Wish. Okay. I do know about this Lightning Bolt, I believe, from a earlier Thoughtseize. Let me check. Yes, they did see it earlier. A Grape Shot. This does slightly punish our line here for doing the Dragon's Rage Channeler instead of the Murktide. So I'm going to just clean up our board here. But they've used all of their resources to do this, and we can just replace our threat with a Murktide. We're kind of trading our board for a bunch of their stuff. Let's cast. Do we want this now on them, or do we want to... I think we just put it on them. Brainstorm is fine. We'll put it on top. Sure. So they're going to machine gun down our little friends here. But they are hellbent with no mana sources. So I'm pretty confident in how this game's going to shape up. Let's do a little Brainstorm. Yeah, I guess he's fine. We'll put the Murktide on the bottom. And then the Ponder. And I think we just play a lethal Murktide here. Blue. Blue. So we have 2 instants, we can take one of those out, or sorry, 3 instants, we take one of those out. We've got 2 sorceries, we can happily take one of those out. I don't think we need to make our creatures any bigger. Our opponent's had enough. Fair enough. Okay, so some kind of combo-y type shenanigans. Let's have some counter spells. We've also seen some artifacts I wouldn't mind blowing up if they're doing passive turns here. Do we think this is a surgical extraction deck? Feels like they should be running Beseech the Mirror, right? We've seen Dark Ritual as well. So I think this sort of stuff is feeling good to me, which means that some of our Lightning Bolts and Unholy Heats feel less good. Snuff Out doesn't feel amazing either. Borrower's not that exciting. There is a question in terms of, do we want to remove win for these little Thopter guys? And honestly, I think we probably do. I'd rather have a couple of Lightning Bolts in there just as an option. The Bowmasters can remove them as well, to be fair. So maybe just 5 removal spells for them is enough. And the Meltdown can also sweep them up too. Yeah, sure, we'll try this. Sure, we have Thoughtseize, we have Force of Will, we have Meltdown. We can find a way of winning the game at some point. The Ponder can be that if we need it. A Dark Ritual. Are we going here? We have seen Thoughtseize already, so we could get... Okay, so what is this? We're up to 4 mana now, so Sheoldred the Apocalypse. I would not like to play against Sheoldred the Apocalypse. So our opponent doing like wheels and stuff here. So our opponent hasn't got many cards left in hand now. I think we're better off Thoughtseizing this turn, and next turn use our Ponder to sculpt and possibly drop a 1-drop. Okay, we'll take a Lion's Eye Diamond because that's the most broken of those cards. If they play their stuff out, we melt them down. The Thoughtseize might also persuade them to play into our Meltdown here. Right, there's the Furnace. There's the Petal. They're not going to like our next turn, I don't believe. I will cast this Ponder. I don't think we're going to need this Force of Negation this turn. I would like to get a threat down. So if we play the Delver this turn, that doesn't really help us out as much as I would like. So I think we put the C back, then the Counterbalance, then the Delver. So we draw the Delver, then we play this, and then we melt them down and take out 2 of their permanents. And then next turn we can Delver with Force of Negation back up. And then if we draw a blue card, the turn after we can play the Counterbalance, or we can play Delver, Counterbalance this turn. Lion's Eye Diamond, sure. So we know there's a land on top, so we definitely don't want to keep that on top right now. So I think we play out the Delver, and then we'll crack our fetch hand in the upkeep. Question is, do we want to get a black source or a red source? I think it's probably a red source. Thoughtseize. Sure, that's fine. I don't think this is worth Force of Negationing, because then we just lose 2 cards instead of 1. So we have the Counterbalance. We'll crack this in the upkeep, get ourselves a Volk. We are drawing very well this game. I will not lie. Our opening hand dealt with their turn 1 play, and then we just had stuff to follow up with. Yeah, I do like Delver decks generally into combo decks, but this has gone very well for us. If we draw a blue card, we can drop the Counterbalance. If we don't, then we'll keep it in hand. Surgical Extraction. This can shut off Beseech the Mirror lines. Hope of Girapur. That's kind of an interesting one. I think we let that go. Let's go attacks. And we'll drop this Counterbalance. This gives us some protection, in theory. So they can attack with their Hope and then do some stuff. A Strike It Rich. This isn't the card that we want to counterspell here. I think we say no and keep it a secret what's on top of our library. Because if this is just a bait spell to see if they can resolve their payoff, I'd rather they try their payoff and fail. Maybe that's an unusual line to take, but we're just trying to stop one thing of theirs from happening. So they can crack this now if they want to. They did not. Okay. An Orcish Bowmasters. This is an excellent draw. Once again, we are drawing incredibly well. If I was our opponent, I would feel pretty aggrieved by this. No, our whole deck is just full of good spells, to be fair. Like, we've boarded quite well for this matchup. We get to take out the Hope. We also shut off any Echo lines here. Yeah, my opponent's had enough. And that's fair enough. Yeah. Our deck's very good at picking these apart. Let's go to round 3. Our opening hand for round 3 looks pretty good. We've got Delver and Daze available. I think we'll do this and we'll lead out on the Snuff Out most likely, but we'll see what our opponent does. Painter's Servant. Let's see what they name here. Red. Are we just going to get turn 1 killed here? No. Okay, so they're going to play around. So they might have Pyroblast as a thing. That's interesting. Sorry, not Pyroblast, Hydroblast. So I want this underground sea. I want to cast this Delver. So if our opponent has a Hydroblast, they can crack it off now anyway. Let's see what we're in for. If they cast something like a Thoughtcast, I'm quite inclined to Snuff Out here. Well, the thing that I said was happening is happening, so let's try and snuff them out. Alright. So now we've got a Thoughtcast coming our way, or coming their way, I suppose. Draw some more cards. Alright, Delver, are you going to blind flip for us, like the good old days when I used to play Delver? Come on. If you can't blind flip Delvers, you shouldn't play Delver, right? Guess we shouldn't be playing Delver. Can't blind flip. So we're going to play out a fetch land. I think we cast the Ponder first, actually. Orcish Bowmasters, Daze, Murktide Regent. I like the Bowmasters. Not a big fan of the Daze, though. Let's put the Bowmasters on top. Say no. We can do stuff with the Murktide relatively soon. But I think we're probably just going to send the Murktide away and try and flip this Delver. Alright. What was our opponent going to try? Thoughtcast, it's pretty good. Our Daze does not line up great here. But we do have a decent amount of artifact hate on our sideboard. So I'm feeling alright about that. Thought Monitor is pretty good. Do I want to trade a Daze for a Lotus Petal? I don't think so. If our opponent gets greedier and keeps trying to go, we can do that. If we remove one of our lands, it means we also can't play something like a Brainstorm or a Ponder if that's what we draw, because we're going to shuffle away the Murktide. An Emery Lurker of the Lock. Okay. Going to give them access to that Painted Servant again, as well as just a draw engine if they want it. We already have a load of red sources here, so I think we're just going to get another Underground Sea. Come on, Delver. Not really the one there, is it? So I think we fire off this Delver, and then the plan is to Bowmasters if they go to draw some cards here, because we might be able to take some creatures out. And given they have an Emery, if they draw an additional card, that would really help us out. A lot of Ancient Tombs, though. Ancient Tomb versus Delver deck is a bit of a risky proposition. You see another Thoughtcast? Another Thought Monitor? A Grindstone, you say? Not a fan of Grindstone here. So they can tap the Emery to replay their Painter, and they have enough to combo us out here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So they pay 2 for the Painter, 3 for the activation, 1 for our Daze. Sure. Let's see if they go for it or not. They might not go for it if they're trying to play around some stuff. The fact they named red earlier makes me think that they might have Hydroblast in their deck. Alright, there's a Painted Servant. What would you like to name colour-wise? Our Delver's certainly not flipping if we have no cards in our library. They named red again. Will they go for it now? This was a Painted Servant from hand, by the way, not one from the graveyard. They're thinking about it. So going back a Mox Opal, we just have more mana available. Come in with the Thought Monitor as well, or are they just going to grind us in our upkeep? Delver's not flipping. They're going to grind us here. Like, they have this game, I just want to see how they approach trying to win it and how cautious they are, because that gives us a little bit of information to play around with in later games. Okay, so they bopped us pretty hard there. But we have Abrades and Meltdowns. We have Pyroblasts. These are all pretty useful things. Counterbalance is kind of okay here, but not incredible. I don't mind a Surgical Extraction for a matchup like this. I think these are also fine. They're a combo deck, which is kind of interesting. So we're incentivized to keep our Force of Wills, even though that's not always the best approach. But I think we're keeping them right here. Snuff Out, they can name black now they've seen that we have Snuff Outs. So does that lose some of their efficacy there? The Borrower is okay. But I think the Meltdowns and Abrades are going to do similar things. So the Borrower is just going to be an upgrade if we make it into those. Do we want something like a Force of Negation? I don't think so. I think these are just going to be generally better. And then we have to decide where we're fitting in the other bits and pieces. I think Thoughtseize is okay. I like having removal for an early Emery. Maybe we'll trim the Snuff Out. A couple of Baubles. And one more cut. I don't really want to cut my counter. Maybe it is the one of our removal spells here, or the Thoughtseize. This one of Thoughtseize has been doing some real lifting so far, so I'm kind of reluctant. We'll keep an Unholy Heat over Lightning Bolt, because Unholy Heat might be able to pick off something like an Urza's Saga. So we'll give that a whirl. Do you want a Sheoldred's Edict to kill something like a Kappa Cannoneer? I don't think so. I think we're better off trying to stop it coming to play in the first place, because it's not a very difficult thing for them to keep around. So, we don't have any lands, so this is a mulligan, even though it's got loads of good cards. This one does have a land. I don't think we're supposed to keep this, to be honest. It's very powerful if you draw a land. It's incredibly powerful if you draw a land. That's 15, so that's 1 in 4 cards. I don't think we can keep this. Alright, this hand is unexciting but keepable. So we can get rid of a Brainstorm. Probably get rid of a Thoughtseize here. So we have a choice here if we want to Pyroblast something on turn 1, like an Emery. But if it's an Emery, we can then Pyroblast on the second turn anyway. So I think we'll probably just ponder, try and look for our second land drop, and kind of get ourselves into this game. Okay, so this is fine. So I think we bury the Bowmasters for now. Keep Tarn on top. So we can play out the Hearse, or we can play out the Pyroblast, depending on what we think is going to be the best way to approach this game. Our opponent might just be able to overpower us with cards. A Grindstone. A Bauble. Right, let's see what they do with this Mishra's Bauble here. Okay, they're holding on to it for Metalcraft. An Urza's Saga. So I would like to find a Wasteland if possible. An Emery, Lurker of the Lock. Not the friendliest card I've ever seen. What do they find here? A decent selection of things. I think at end step. I don't think we want this second Bowmasters right now. I think I'd rather jam a Bowmasters now, untap and try an unlicensed Hearse, and that will shut down the Emery in a different way. The other option is to Brainstorm, looking for a Wasteland to get rid of this Urza's Saga. I think I would like to Brainstorm here. Interesting. We could just play DRC and the Delver. Sorry, and the Pyroblast here. That's probably fine. I don't really want this Polluted Delta, but I do want a creature in my graveyard. This is a little bit awkward how we line it up here. So I guess we put the Delta on the bottom, then the Delver. So we jam this, play ourselves a DRC. We destroy their Emery, ideally. Our channel here. Okay, I have a force of will here. So if we had played the unlicensed Hearse first, it would have made a difference here. So they're going to get the Painted Servant back now. And then the turn after they Grindstone us and we die. And the top card of our library doesn't do anything. Yeah, that's a real doozy for us right there. Here's the Lotus Petal. So they can kill us right now if they want to. And there's nothing we can do about it. Painted Servant, yep. There's the guy. He's going to grind us here. We have one card in hand, so I would definitely go for it if I were them. Probably going to do it in our upkeep. But we know the top card of our library doesn't do anything, so we're just dead here. They're not going to give us any windows. Yeah, we kind of got clowned on there. Like I said, we were kind of down on resources here. We didn't have any ability to fight over anything. We just had to go for it, really. I suppose if we could have sculpted a turn where we maybe played Unlicensed Hearse with Pyroblast backup. No, I think we couldn't have done that by the order the cards came out, right? Okay, let's go to round 4 here. Alright, into round 4, we've got a classic Delver into nonsense protection hand. So let's keep this and hope we can flip our Delver. What I will say about Delver decks these days is because people are running more stuff to go with Dragon's Rage Channeler, it means that your Delvers don't flip quite as often as they used to because some of your cantrips are now like artifacts like Bauble and stuff. So it can be a little bit awkward on that front. Can we lead out on this Volcanic Island for the purposes of having Brainstorms and fetch lands? We've got Daze and Force of Will to back this up. So let's see if we can go all the way with our little Delver friend. Alright, we're looking at some more 8-cast type stuff over here. Emery, Lurker of the Lock. I would like to counterspell this with a Daze, please. Because this Daze isn't going to get any better. I'm going to fight with a Force of Will here. I would love to flip this Delver naturally. We did not flip the Delver naturally. That is sad. We could play out the Scalding Tarn so we get 2 looks at things that aren't... that don't flip the Delver. So if we see it and we don't want it, we don't have to draw it. But I think we're better off having that for a Brainstorm right now. Right, there's an Orcish Bowmasters from our opponent and an Ancient Tomb. We can bounce some stuff with Borrower next turn. Soul Guide Lantern. I don't care about that one. Like, it does make things awkward for DRC and our Murktide, but we don't have those right now. Do I counter the Thoughtcast? I don't think so. I think we're trying to counter the payoffs when they get there. Right, Mox Opal, we've still got one floating, nothing else. Alright. Come on, Delver. Be a friend. They've seen our Borrower. Okay. And they've seen our Borrower again. Come on, Delver. Poor Delver. Not really doing the work for us right there. So we have Force of Will plus Borrower. Our opponent does have an Ancient Tomb, which is doing more damage to them than our Delver is. Yuck. Okay, we can bounce one of those tokens to make it a little bit less exciting. Playing a Bauble. Alright, deck. Orcish Bowmasters. Do I want to reveal this card? I will draw it, though. I think it's slightly better than other things we have going on right now. They can't make a token this turn, they can make one next turn. So we're going to get our almighty 1 point of damage in. And then try and Bowmasters them in response to something. Another Saga. It's a lot of big boys. A lot of big boys. Right, let's try Bowmasters. I don't think this is worth them counterspelling when they're just going to be pumping out Saga tokens. If our Delver had flipped, then our opponent would be on a lot lower life total, so we might be able to like tempo them out a little bit. But now it's a bit awkward. A Lightning Bolt. Yes, I reveal the Lightning Bolt and flip the Delver. Hallelujah, we flipped. We're getting close to hard casting these forces, so 1, 2, 3. So this Saga's going to be pretty large, so I don't really want to... I guess I could attack with this Orc army if they make a token here. Oh no, they've got a Seat the Synod as well. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, yeah. So let's just bash him with this guy. We can bounce the token that has the Shadow Spear. Try and buy ourselves a little bit of time that way. That's a chunky lad, isn't it? A 5/5. What a big old boy. Alright. So for the purposes of Pithing Needle, we are going to crack this Scalding Tarn here. I think we're going to get ourselves a second Underground Sea. And then that'll make our opponent think about things like Grief potentially in our deck. Why we want the second black. And we already have our red covered. Yep, so there's a Shadow Spear. So we could bounce the Shadow Spear. 3, 4, 5, 6. Interesting. We could bounce the Shadow Spear and just try and counter it on the way back. There's an 8/8 trampler there. If we bounce this guy, we're kind of in the same problem next turn. So I think we have to bounce the Shadow Spear here. We can fight over this with a Force, which I think we have to. Oh no, what is this? Force of Negation. It's Force there. Force of Negation. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So we take the 6 here And then we have lethal on the next swing. We swing with everything. They can only block one. Let's bolt them now. In case they have something like Force of Negation here. That should be lethal here. Yeah. Oh, that was a tight one to navigate. We got through it. If our Delver flips, then that game would have been pretty elementary to win. But it didn't, so... Let's take the Unlicensed Hearse. I do not like Dazes here. Snuff Out is pretty reasonable still. I don't think Counterbalance is going to get there. They've got quite a lot of high CMC stuff going on. That's Lightning Bolt. And then where we're looking... I do think we still want these Force of Wills to sort of hit the big payoffs. And Brazen Borrower is not unhelpful. But I think if any of Brazen Borrower becoming any of these is an upgrade. So I think we do that. And we'll take out one Bauble. I do want to keep a Lightning Bolt instead of an Unholy Heat. Now, Unholy Heat does kill something in a pinch. We can't go to face and race that way with it. So it's not as clear cut. Ugh. If our opponent's all in on nothing but Urza Saga, this hand's okay, but we can't keep a hand that doesn't play the game. This can answer an Urza Saga. We can Thoughtseize on turn 1. What are we getting rid of here? Is it the Lightning Bolt? It's probably not the Lightning Bolt. It's probably the Force here. The Lightning Bolt is a cleaner answer for Emery. We're already down a card. We don't want to be... Alright, so nothing on turn 1. We're not going to Wasteland this. We need to Wasteland scarier things than that. That does change what I would like to do here. I think we want to play the Delver and start beating away. And so there is a trade-off for playing the Volcanic Island there. This means that we can bolt an Emery, but we can't Thoughtseize their hand. Master Thoughteize. Yuck. Don't like that one very much. Yep, here comes all the nonsense. So here's a 1-1. You don't see a lot of Psy these days, but it's going to have a real good time into us right now. Okay. Any more 0 drops over there? Thoughtcast, yep. Okay. So cracking the baubles now. It's a good idea to do that before we have Bowmasters mana. And they also have enough Metalcraft. They don't need to worry about anything else. What are you going to show us, Delver? A Scalding Tarn. Yuck. Okay, so I think we are in Brainstorm Town here. We've got a land that we're happy to put back. Yeah, they're going in at this, aren't they? Okay, so now I think we are priced into getting a Thoughtseize on the go. I think our opponent's won this game already, if I'm being perfectly honest. But we do have things like Meltdown, which can really change things up. Force of Will and Force of Negation. Which of these is... I guess the Force of Will is harder to play around than a Force of Negation. They have a Saga here, though, so we do get to have our Wasteland cake and eat it. But we are not doing great here. Yep, so there's the Saga we know about. We already have that covered. Just something. A Thoughtcast, that's a very good top deck. Let's get some more velocity going. Yep, we are taking some beats from little friends. What have we got, Delver? Snuff Out. Yes, I would like to draw the Snuff Out. They have a Force of Negation. They can hard cast Force of Negation. Huh. They've just conceded straight away. I'm not sure that's what they need to do there. But I guess we hit this, hit this. They don't know that we have a Wasteland, though. Do they know we have a Wasteland? They might have seen it with... No, they didn't see it with any of their baubles. Maybe our opponent just had to go. I think this match was looking to be quite interesting, actually. Like, our opponent's probably going to be on the sacrifices and guys to draw cards line. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen how that one played out a bit more, but I guess we take the win and move on to the final round. Right, the table for last round is alright. We got Ponder to set things up. If Bowmasters is good, our hand has 2 of them. So, but if Bowmasters is bad, our hand is a little bit less exciting to me. A Dragon's Rage Channeler. That's a lot of value. I don't think we can just play into the Daze here either. Because if we pitch a Force of Will and they just Daze us, we're going to have a miserable time. Alright, I will take that though. Let's go and get a Volcanic. Let's bolt their DRC. Alright, that's a little bit better for us. Scalding Tarn. Let's see what they find out here. We have Force of Will or Daze, or both, if that's the thing we really need to do. Okay, so we're on the rug train here. Questing Druid. So playing the Druid half. Interesting. Interesting. Like, our Bowmasters can pick this up, but if they have a Daze, that's kind of annoying. We will need a thing to pick it up, like a mana source. We'll see. Maybe I should have tried to fight over that one. I don't know. Okay with the situation we're in still. I would like to ponder. A Murktide Regent is going to be pretty large and in charge when the time comes. So then we go Underground Sea, Murktide Regent, Scalding Tarn, no to the shuffle. Play. What do we want to play here? If we play out the... We do want to shuffle next turn. Which means that we don't really want this Bauble to go off unless we're trying to play around a Daze. I'm more scared of more green creatures, I think, here. Let's try and hit their Tropical Island. And I don't think I want to play this Bauble out. And play out next turn. Alright, so now they're growing their Questing Druid, so that could be a little bit of an issue for us. Maybe we should have tried to fight over that with our Dazes and things. But if we'd have just found a land and could just pop straight into the Bowmasters, that upside was just enormous for us. Alright. Just a 2-2. Okay, so now we play this. We jam this Bauble. Crack this. We know what top card of our library is already. Oh, you're not going to stifle us, are you? Get this. Let's see what top card our opponent's library is. A Murktide. Okay, so we have a counterspell for that. I don't think we fire off his Bowmasters. Maybe they go for some sort of cantrip. We can then fire it off and get a bit more value there. Or if they just attack, we can trade the little bonus guy. Right, here we go. Right, so this is attempts at the Bowmasters. We can ping this for 1 and then block. Any spell can make it grow. Feels like they've got a spell here. A Daze. This is going to grow their Questing Druid. Am I interested in fighting over this? I don't think so. We're just going to put a Murktide on the stack. With ideally protection if we can draw a blue card. And that should be big enough. Didn't draw a blue card. We did draw a lightning bolt though. Alright, we can lightning bolt this guy. A Daze would be really annoying. That's so annoying. We'll not pay for this. We won't do enough anyway. Then we do already have a black card in hand, so I will get this second Underground Sea. Then we will jam this Murktide as big as we can. Let me just get rid of some lands here. Alright, so we have a 6/6. We have a Force of Will for their Murktide Regent. And our creature is big enough to tussle with the Questing Druid for now, but that Questing Druid can certainly get out of hand. There's the Volk. Looks like a Murktide. So we can just Daze this. And I think pick up our Volk here. So their creature is a 5/5, which is pretty large in charge. We can chump block it because it doesn't have trample though, which is probably what our plan's going to be. A Scalding Tarn, that's not the one, is it? So we'll play out this Volk they know about. Go to attacks. I don't think we win this game by sitting back, so we're going to attack here. And then we're going to fire this little friend for a chump blocker. It's going to be the Reckless Impulse, Seek the Beast. Yeah, that's going to put this into a 6/6. And give them another one of the little friends for later on to cast. This card is really good. I will record a league with this at some point. So do I take 6 now? I think I do take 6 now. And then have blockers for when it gets bigger. It could be an error not to take the damage now. Like the free life now. But we'll see. A Delver of Secrets. I think I would rather have Force of Will than Delver here. Like we have a 2-turn clock. Just with the Murktide doing its thing. I think we play out the Scalding Tarn because this gives us the ability to hardcast a Force of Will potentially next turn. Well, I think this next turn is going to be the end of the game one way or the other. Can they get through our Force of Will? Pretty good. Alright, we've got it there. Nice. Whew. Bit of a tight one. Matchups like this, I don't really like trading 2-for-1 spells like this, so we're just going to bunch some Pyroblast in there. Counterbalance is going to be pretty tasty. I'd like the Sheoldred's Edict here. Abrade can remove some stuff, so I don't hate that. Unlicensed Hearse is kind of an interesting one. You can sort of shred away bits of their stuff. Do I want an Abrade just as a way of killing some smaller guys? Just a little bit of removal. 2 mana, 3 damage. Or we can have a Miser's Force of Will as a nice thing that we can have. I think we just want to remove all of their things though, so we're going to go for something like this. Our opponent conceded rather than play another game, which is kind of interesting. Yeah. How do I think that game would normally go? So we've got Orcish Bowmasters, which is a pretty potent trump in the matchup. Now they do have things like Veil of Summer they can board in, but the way we sideboarded, taking out a lot of our blue cards, means that Veil of Summer isn't actually going to be that useful some of the time. So I think I like our chances. The fact that we won game 1 is quite big there. But again, our opponent conceded, so we'll take it. It was a 3-2. Not the most exciting finish there. So what do I think of this deck? It does what it's supposed to do quite effectively. We play threats. We protect threats. We kill their stuff. We find the bits we need to get over the finish line. Quite often, like in that last game, one turn either way would have made a huge difference and changed the outcome of the game. So you're very much just getting over the finish line with this deck. Our one of Thoughtseize was the absolute all-star. We kept drawing this at the opportune times. So good job on that one. What I will say, Delver of Secrets did not want to flip for us very much this league. And like we have a lot of ways of flipping it at the end of the day. So we have these and we have these. So that's what 23 cards. Now that is certainly less than Delver decks used to play back in the day, because we have more creatures than we used to. Like 10 years ago when we used to play Delver, it was like 12 creatures, 12 creatures, 18 lands, spells. But the Mishra's Bauble does eat into account a little bit, and the fact that we're playing more creatures does as well, but the creatures we're playing are pretty good. The question that really makes you wonder is, do we want to play Delver of Secrets anymore? Now, if you play this and it flips, it is incredible. But if it doesn't, it's kind of not doing a lot. So we could play the new card. It's like a 1 mana, I think it's a 3/3 fairy, but it comes in tapped with sleep counters on it. So you have to pay mana to remove sleep counters, or it just removes them anyway in your upkeep. And that's going to be a reliable 3/3. I don't know if it's better than Delver of Secrets. Like, the high end of Delver of Secrets is so high that it's definitely worth the slot overall, I would say. But I haven't played with the new fairy, so I should probably check the new fairy out to see if I think it is worth doing. I know a few people were trying it out to begin with, but whenever a new set comes out, people do. They try the new stuff, and then over like a week or so, or 2 weeks, or a month, or whatever, it just kind of disappears out of people's deck lists because they realize it's not really optimal. So I'm pretty sure Delver probably is the optimal thing. It is kind of annoying that we can't help flip this more regularly. We also don't have things like Mystic Sanctuary, where you can just go and get that in the sort of mid to late game to guarantee a flip and also get back your best card. But then our best cards aren't as good as like a lot of other Delver decks where they have some sort of card draw thing, a Lorien Revealed or something. Or back in the day when it was, I say back in the day, it wasn't even that long ago, Expressive Iteration was the thing that you could fetch up with your Mystic Sanctuaries. Just sort of have this nice late game inevitability of just loads and loads of card advantage. So we don't have that in our deck. We are just trying to get over the line, and Dragon's Rage Challenger isn't always reliable. It's more reliable than Delver of Secrets, I reckon. But not always, right? That's kind of the problem. And Delver of Secrets isn't always going to flip. So again, it's kind of an unreliable threat. And Orcish Bowmasters isn't a reliable threat either, because sometimes the 1/1 isn't good enough to do anything. And Murktide Regent is pretty reliable, to be honest. Obviously, if someone's messing with your graveyard, it can be a bit of a pain. But I think Murktide is probably our most reliable threat, weirdly. But Dragon's Rage Channeler doesn't have to be attacking for 3 to be a threat, right? The card selection you get alone is really potent, and then it builds into your other threats. And, you know, it helps flip your things. So there's a nice synergy here. It fuels your Murktide, it gets your Delvers to flip in. So there's definitely going to be games where your threats aren't as impactful as you'd maybe like. And that's kind of just the nature of this deck sometimes. And at the end of the day, you're not going to win a Magic the Gathering tournament without getting a little bit of a slice of luck here and there. Like, you can play perfectly and still not win, but you do need a little bit of assistance. So I think running these threats that sometimes aren't always online, whilst you lose some percentage points in that regard, the percentage points you make up by how their sort of top level, like the ceiling of their playability is so high that I think it's probably is still worth Delver. But I want to try the Fairy, and we will try it on the channel at some point. Don't you worry. But yeah, this deck seems fine. It's still ticking along as one of the sort of higher up decks. I think most people have moved on to Blue-Black Scam, but I still think this deck is perfectly fine. Lightning Bolt is a very serviceable card, and the sideboard cards you get are really good. But like we saw in the Blue-Black Scam matchup, the fact that we have another colour means that Wastelands are much more impactful against us than they are against other people, and we're not playing all the basic cyclers, so we can't protect ourselves in that manner, and that's certainly going to come back to bite us, as you saw. But if you want to play Legacy and you like Delver strategies, personally I prefer Rug Delver, but this deck is perfectly viable and you could definitely take down taunts with it. It just does powerful things. We never really got to sort of see the Unlicensed Hearse do its thing, which is a bit unusual, and the Counterbalance wasn't amazing for us either, but again, that's sort of a little bit of variance there. The Counterbalance can just shut things off, but we're not really a deck that wants to play the longest of games, so I'm not really sure if I want to be a Counterbalance deck. Alright, I think we're done with this one. I hope you enjoyed us playing Kulne's challenge-winning Grixis Delver deck. If you would like your deck on the channel, by all means get in touch. We can do a donation deck for you here. You can get in touch via the comment section of my videos, or you can just message me on my Discord. Thank you very much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye.